Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1351B, and today's date is August 7th, 2017, and the title of the episode is Russia and China are now teaming up to counter the deep state. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, Rand Paul is out there, and he is saying that, listen, Jeff Sessions needs to stop this civil asset forfeiture. He's saying that, listen, the Constitution and everything that America stands for is innocent until proven guilty. And this is the bedrock of the American jurisprudence. Civil asset forfeiture, a legal process in which the government confiscates your property without a guilty verdict, well, that is a problem. And I agree with him. And the Trump administration, I think he's moving in the wrong direction on this issue. He needs to either speak to Jeff Sessions or do something and say, or nudge him and say, this is completely the wrong direction. Because I hate to say it, the Constitution is above what they're trying to do. And the founding fathers put this into place on purpose. Now, remember, Sessions reversed a 2015 ban on the adoptive seizures, which occur when state law enforcement officers circumvent state limitations on civil forfeiture by turning seized property over to federal officials for forfeiture in exchange for up to 80% of the proceeds of the forfeited property. The Department of Justice has given police incentives to turn civil forfeiture into an industry by allowing police to keep most of the proceeds from the forfeiture. And what we're seeing right now is this is happening now at the federal level. Now, the Fifth Amendment protects Americans from being deprived of their property without due process of law. Yet civil forfeiture allows the government to take an individual's property without first proving guilt. Now, to add insult to injury, Justice Clarence Thomas recently wrote, "These forfeiture operations frequently target the poor and other groups least able to defend their interest in forfeiture proceedings." Yes, because they don't have the money to fight all of this. And we can see this is definitely the wrong direction because this goes against everything that the Bill of Rights stand for, that the Constitution stands for, and basically they're trying to use this to get as much as they possibly can. Now, we know the deep state, they are pushing as hard as they possibly can to remove Trump. I mean, you can see the corporate media is out there. You can see the Republicans and Democrats. Remember, the deep state is not just the Democrats. It's just not the Republicans. And yes, there's other factions intertwined with these groups, but they're made up of both. Because remember, Congress and these individuals that are there, they are paid off by corporations, by other entities, by the central bank, by foreign governments, and they do their bidding, and they don't want their way of life to change. And we can see that they're pushing very hard to remove Trump, and we can see that Trump, he's trying to play both sides right now. It looks like he's a lone wolf. He's on his own here, and you have the Republicans, you have the Democrats, you can have other entities all hitting him from all different directions. And right now, Michael Savage, he's a conservative talk show host. He's out there saying, listen, is the U.S. on the verge of a nervous breakdown or a civil war? Because what he's saying is that, if the globalists, if the neocons, if the central bank, if the deep state get their way and Trump is brought down with this ridiculous Russian collusion or whatever they can dream up, if they can take him down or even assassinate him, will the people resort to mob type of violence? And he's saying that we've never really seen mob violence here in the U.S. We've seen it in small doses out in L.A., in some other places like Baltimore. A lot of it, we've been seeing it with George Soros, that he instigates this violence and he pushes these mobs to do things, but they're very localized and they're kind of small. He's talking about mob violence across the country where people just can't take it anymore and they've had it and they don't agree with what has happened here, and they go out and all of a sudden they say it's enough with the deep state, it's enough with the neocons, it's enough with all of this, and they just turn into one gigantic mob and everything is in anarchy. And yes, this could occur. This could happen. If you push a people too far and you keep pushing them and their backs are against the wall and they cannot take it anymore and everyone is losing jobs, everyone can't find jobs, they don't believe in the leadership, they will resort to this sooner or later. Now, something very interesting. Prince Harry was invited to Google's shadowy Davos-style summit. And he attended the summit in Italy this weekend at one of Sicily's most exclusive resorts. And there was a lot of tech billionaires. There were a lot of stars there. And this was hosted by Larry Page and Sergey Brin of Google. They are the founders. And it's very interesting of why he was there. Now, what's very interesting is that this is not widely publicized on the Royal Circular, where the Royals' family schedule is normally set out for the public. So this was kind of left off. Now, the reason for Harry's attendance, it's really not clear. Now, we know that Google and Facebook and the rest, they are trying to stop the alternative media. They're trying to push away all other news except for the deep state news. This is all that they want. And we can see why William might have attended, because he has something to do, his interests lie in like online bullying and mental health. But Harry's attendance, that's not really clear. So this is very interesting, and it was completely left off of the Royal Circular, which is very interesting. Now, out in Venezuela, we can see there were 2 fighters that had been killed and 8 others captured after there was a group of armed men that stormed the Venezuelan army base. And they were in military uniforms, and Maduro announced that he stopped this terrorism act. Now, was this a coup d'etat that was taking place? Because there were about 20 armed men that stormed the military base in the city of Valencia, and these insurgents, well, they managed to reach the weapons depot, but the alarm went off, and the troops were alerted, and they came in, and then there was just this gigantic gun battle that was happening here, and eventually they were able to stop these individuals. Now, Maduro is out there, and he's announced that it was a paid operation by Miami and Colombia. And he's saying this is where large Venezuelan expat communities reside, and they paid for this coup d'etat. Now, was this backed by the United States? Were there others involved? We don't know at this point. Now, North Korea, they're out there, and they're completely rejecting the UN Security Council resolution, which placed new sanctions on North Korea. Now, coming out of the corporate media here in the United States, out in South Korea, we can see the deep state. Now, remember, everything funnels through these media outlets, and it's not just here in the United States, it's around the world, especially where they have a certain type of control in these different countries. They have people inside, they report the news. A lot of this news is actually coming from the United States, and these other news agencies just pick up on it, and they just report from that news. And what we're seeing right now is that there's a lot of news out there that North Korea is not going to have talks. North Korea rejects talks, and Tillerson is out there saying that North Korea can show it's ready for negotiations by stopping missile launches. Well, North Korea is out there saying that the United States can show that they're ready for negotiations if they stop military drills. Now, we need to remember, we have China and Russia in the middle of this. Now, Lavrov is meeting with Tillerson. They're trying to talk with each other, trying to calm the situation down. Lavrov noted that the unacceptability of the escalation of tensions resulting from the U.S. military buildup in the area of the Korean Peninsula needs to stop, and this will help in the negotiation process. And we can see at this point that the United States, even though the corporate media is out there saying that North Korea is not ready, actually, North Korea is out there and they're saying that they will have talks. And what we're finding out, and of course, this is not what the news is reflecting, it's that the United States is not ready for direct dialogue with North Korea. Now, what would make the United States ready for some negotiations? Well, it looks like a mediator would be needed to establish dialogue between North Korea and Washington. In fact, the question is how to find the point where the interest and capabilities of North Korea and Washington come together. Given all the contrast between the political cultures and approaches to the situation, the two players, well, they need to come together and they need to mutually agree to speak to each other. Now, Rybakov, he is saying that, listen, the United States, they're really not ready for direct dialogue. Actually, they don't even want it yet. They want North Korea to do what they're saying. Now, we can see Nikki Haley's out there, and we can see that Tillerson, he's still saying, listen, there is a way to talk about this and to calm the situation down. And we know that Russia and China right now, they're putting forth their, multi-step process of bringing peace to this area. It has been done before. Actually, if we go back in time, remember, there were positive examples of U.S.-North Korea dialogue within different formats, including the six-way talks between Russia, North Korea, the United States, Japan, China, and South Korea in the 2000s. This is how South Korea and North Korea got together, and they were really working together economically, and they were coming together until Obama stepped in, the deep state stepped in, and separated them once again. And, of course, this is what the deep state was doing out in the South China Sea. And then Duterte down there said, hey, wait a minute. Why don't we just talk to China? Why do we need the United States? It seems like they're causing problems. And when I say United States, I'm not talking about the people of the United States. I'm talking about the deep state. And this is what the Duterte did. He spoke to China, and China said, listen, if you want to use the South China Sea to fish, no problem. China actually brought their warships to the Philippines. So we can see that if these talks were really going to happen, it can happen. It has happened before, but you have to remember the power within the deep state, their structure, they only deal in absolutes. If you don't do what we say, we're not doing anything. Because remember, they're like the Sith in Star Wars. They see black and white. They see nothing in between. And if you actually look and watch them, you can see this is what they've done in Syria. Assad must give up. Or out in Ukraine, you must give up. Lower your weapons. Give up your weapons. Then we can talk about peace. The same thing was happening in Syria. When the United States had the upper hand, they said, listen, Assad must remove himself from government. That's all they ever said. Now, the United States, the deep state, they don't have the upper hand, so they really can't say that. They think they have the upper hand in North Korea, and this is why they're talking in absolutes. Listen to Nikki Haley. Listen to McMaster's. Listen to all these individuals that are part of the deep state. You can see they speak in absolutes. They don't want to see the gray areas. And we need the gray areas so we can have peace. Now, the U.S. is deploying the A-10 Thunderbolts, along with a crew of about 270 Air Force personnel, to the Baltic nations. One of them specifically is Estonia. And again, they're bringing in more and more weapons into this area because they're doing it for one purpose and one purpose only. Eventually, what they want to do is they're trying to provoke Russia. Is it working? Absolutely not. Russia cannot be provoked into a war. As you can see, it's completely impossible. They've been trying for many, many years, and Russia, it just will not happen. Can they do this to North Korea? Well, they're hoping to do this. And can they do this to Syria? I don't think at this point. Can they do it to Iran? Well, they're actually very calm in what they do, and it's shown to be very difficult that they really can't get anywhere with Iran. They tried sanctions, they try everything, but as you can see, they don't budge. China, same thing. So the only actual area, not including Venezuela right now, is North Korea to get something started. Now, McMaster's, he's out there and he's just flipping out. He's saying that Russia is using sophisticated campaign of subversion and disinformation and propaganda that is going every day in an effort to break apart Europe. No, Europe is looking at the situation and saying, okay, every time the U.S. places sanctions on Russia, it is hurting their economies. Europe has already stated, listen, you're not going to tell us where we're getting our energy from. And actually, Russia and Europe, they're moving closer and closer together. And of course, McMaster's, well, he couldn't elaborate on the specific actions of Russia. He's just out there just blurting things out because what they're losing is the narrative of the story, and they have nothing else. Now, Russia, they're looking to establish and reinstate certain ties with Libya. Now, they had contracts signed during Gaddafi's rule, and this includes the previous agreements in the transport sector, construction of railways, energy, electrification, and a number of other things. And right now, they're saying, listen, we're ready to invest in Libya, and we're ready to deal with whatever government is there. Now, we have the UN-backed coalition government, where the people didn't really elect this government. And then we have the General Haftar government, which is supported by the Libyan National Army and a number of other individuals in the country. And then there's other different factions within Libya. And it looks like right now Russia is working with Haftar to take back the country. But we know the coalition forces, they want to maintain control of this country. And this is why the U.S. was out there saying, listen, if you start to meddle in Libya, we're going to pull out of the INF Treaty. Of course, they're going to flip-flop this whole thing around and make it look like that Russia actually was the one who broke the INF Treaty. But you can see what is happening right now. China and Russia, they're teaming up right now. And they're going after everything the deep state has done. And they're not doing this with force. They're not bringing in armed forces. They're doing this with economics. They're saying, let's have economic ties. Let's bring investment into the country. Let's rebuild the country. Let's do this together. Iran has done this with Iraq. China has done this with Iraq. Russia is doing this with Saudi Arabia. Russia and China are doing this with Libya. They're doing this with Syria. I mean, China already has contract with Syria to start rebuilding because the whole country is a complete mess, and this was due to the deep state going after Assad. So what is happening right now, Russia and China, very quietly, very slowly, they have teamed up to counter everything the deep state has been doing. Look what they're doing in North Korea. Yes, if you look at the corporate media, it doesn't look like it. But what they've done is they've created this multi-step plan. They're submitting it to the UN, and they're trying to get the United States and North Korea to follow this. They've done this also out in Ukraine, and you can see a war really never kicked off to the fullest extent. And we can see that this is what they're doing with North Korea to calm the situation down. So everything that Russia and China are doing, it is to counter what the deep state was trying to do. And then if you bring in the Belt and Road, the Silk Road, you can see that they're starting to have trade amongst all these countries. And as this expands, guess what? The deep state gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually, what has to happen is their funding needs to be completely cut off. And guess what? They have nothing left. So you can see how this is all progressing right now. And you can see that we're entering a new stage in the world arena. Because the old system, the old dollar-centric system, I hate to say it, it's coming to an end. It has reached the point where all of these countries have been set up, their payment system, their exchange system. They're trading without the dollar. They're dumping the treasury bonds. They're buying gold. Everything that they've been doing was to go along with this change in this world. Now, I'm not saying the change is going to be better. It will be in the beginning because everything will be reset. We'll get rid of all this debt. Empire building will come to an end. And everything will have to be reset. We'll be on a brand new system. Is it going to be as good or bad? Well, we don't know as of yet, but we know there's going to be a transition period. And this is what everyone needs to be ready and prepared for. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.